cognizant enough of the wave that you're riding, and you have to know that there's a wave that you're riding, and you also have to know when you have to get off, and at what and also recognize that it is going to end. That this whole journalism cycle or the entrepreneurship cycle goes in cycles. I mean, it's a reason why it's called cycles. So, also for me, what clicked was that I realized that everybody was exiting out of the sector, kind of like now, in a lot of sectors. But I was entering it, realizing that it's not like new media was going to go away. It's not like the businesses are not going to come back. And if you focus on it long enough, ultimately, you will make a business out of it. For me, blogging was, and there's a lot of baggage even now associated with blogging. I never looked at it as anything other than a tool. And the best part about blogging is that it allowed you as a journalist to do breaking. I mean, this is all not news for you, any of you now. Probably shouldn't repeat it now. But it gives you great way in chunk sizes to deliver breaking news. And if it's a breaking story, developing story, like for instance right now, we're covering all the changes that are happening at Time Inc. They laid off 600 people. They're doing all the reorgs. Today they sent out like 6 memos in the company. So I think we're 4 of them on our site today. So it's very convenient that way to break the story. One of the not so secrets of the blog format is that there's an unwritten promise when somebody comes to the site that there always be something fresh. And it just was the perfect medium for breaking news in the media sector and all kinds of sectors, of course. So that helped us a lot. Advertising, we never really did any CPM models, and I'm sure, I don't know how many of them know about CPMs and all kinds of advertising terminologies, but we never sold advertising as impression based. For us, it was always about what we sold advertising as part of how we grew was that sponsorship model. So the advertisers paid to be part of this quote unquote premium environment that we had developed. So it was a trade business to business audience. So I think that helped us quite a lot.
So instead of selling that you had such big volume of viewers, you had the smaller but more
focused. Yeah, and I think one of the things if any of you are interested in starting a media business, whatever your passion is, I think you have to look for a few things. First is are there enough competitors in this space? If you're trying to start another green tech blog, forget it at this point. Logit is trying to start one, by the way, which I don't know why. Then, let me go back there. If you think you are the best, maybe. But, so you first think about that. Then you look at whether there are enough endemic advertisers in this space. In green tech, maybe that's true, that there are enough advertisers beyond a certain point that can support 10, 15, 20 different publications, be it blogs or big media sites. And then, of course, you start with it. So I think you have to look at least those two things. And the good part, at this point in history, back when I started, it wasn't true. This was 6.5 years ago now. Back when I started, now, there are a lot of services that have come up which help bloggers bloggers or journalists focus on what they do best, and then the rest you can tie up with them. For instance, Federated Media is one company that sells ads on blogs. Google AdSense, but that really doesn't scale beyond a certain point. And it can give you a few $100s a month if you're lucky, maybe $1,000 a month or something. Unless you have huge scale and then you're in politics and stuff, but that's a whole different area. But if it's business to business, Google AdSense doesn't make a business for you. But there are all these ancillary tools, federated media, blog ads, glam media, all the other kinds of things. And even you can, a lot of the big media companies, Forbes, Martha Stewart started for a while and then they closed it down. Time Inc. started for a while, they closed it down. These ad networks that you can become part of. For instance, Forbes has a business media blog network. So you can get affiliated with that, and then you focus on what you do best. And the tools, of course, are the easiest at this point. I mean, what I tell people is probably the best time in history, and I'm sure, Bill, you tell this to all your students, the best time in history to be a journalist. I know there's a lot of fear in the industry and all the layoffs, and it's hard to look past beyond, well, 2009. But the reality is that the craft of journalism and the need for it is probably the highest at this point than any time in history. And of course, the ways to do it is so much easier. And the artificial lines between what's blog, what's not, what's a journalist, who's a blogger, who cares? I mean, I didn't care. So, but as a journalist, you have a lot of advantage as formal training in this, and as I'm assuming most of you have professional backgrounds as journalists or have at least done some journalism prior to this. Using the core skills to then use in the blogging medium, so to speak, you have a lot of advantages over somebody who's just coming fresh and does not have either journalism training or is a journalist. And what we are bringing inherently as journalists is that skeptical eye. It just is something in our DNA that firstly makes us become a journalist, and then of course as we go into these fast moving mediums, it helps us a lot. It helped me a lot. So, and also, I mean, I think one of the key things when I tell people, if I have one evangelizing function in the world, which I don't really, who am I? But if I do, it's journalist as an entrepreneur. And which is, again, what I all repeated, for the first time in history, it's possible for journalists to become independent if they're good enough and build their own brands and then build media companies out of it. So, and I think, I had a point, I lost my track there. Journalist as an entrepreneur.
Something in the DNA is working.
Yeah, actually, thank you. So I think one of the good things about journalists being heads of companies or starting their own companies is that advertising then becomes part of the DNA of the whole company. Because for us, advertising, the kind of advertisers that we take are as important as the content on the site. And what that does is it creates a great experience for the readers. They know that the ads that we see on the site are very relevant. Of course, not as relevant as the stories on the site, but they're as relevant, or almost as relevant as the content on the site. And the good part is, as a journalist, if you're heading the company, you define the boundaries of where the advertising and editorial line is there. And what I tell, and what I've said before, if you believe that journalism these days is a conversation, all of us are talking about that every day. This is part of a whole global conversation, or in your sector, we commit the journalism that helps spur various conversations, whether in our case is business connections or business intelligence in the community. And also we do a lot of events, so our community is a lot more offline. We just did 3 events yesterday and the day before. I don't know what we're thinking to do 3 events, but that's another story. If you believe that journalism is a conversation, then advertising is also part of that conversation. As a journalist, you're probably the best position to define how much advertisers intrude into that conversation. And that's where me heading a company, I don't head it now, but I headed it for the first 6 years. I can define the line that helps make advertisers feel part of the community, yet they don't become obtrusive and explicit.